Thank you, Chairman Scott. Thank you so much, Secretary Cardona, for your service, for being here today to discuss some of the most important issues facing our nation's students. I agree with your compelling words about the tragedy in Texas. We can and we must do more. Last year, we discussed the Student Support and Academic Enrichment Flexible Block Grant Program under Title IV-A of the Every Student Succeeds Act. We know these grants enable states and local school districts to support a variety of opportunities in well-rounded education, including the arts, music, civics, computer science, second language. Title IV-A also supports safe and healthy students, including mental health and violence prevention and the effective use of technology. So based on our earlier conversations, I know we agree about the importance of Title IV-A and that more must be done to make these opportunities available to all students. So this year, I once again led a bipartisan appropriations letter asking for $2 billion for Title IV-A flexible block grants, which is significantly higher than the fiscal year 22 omnibus and the president's previous proposed funding level. So, Mr. Secretary, I'm concerned about the consequences of underfunding Title IV-A. So what has the administration done in the past year to make sure that all students are getting a well-rounded education? Shouldn't Congress provide funding for Title IV-A in line with the bipartisan letter beyond what was proposed in the fiscal year 23 budget? And if not, how would that affect students?
Yes, thank you for that. And again, this was an example of us putting a proposal in by the due date, but the budget from the previous year wasn't done. So we're thankful for the funds, and we agree. Again, as an educator, and I remember my visit to Oregon where we saw programs where students had summer enrichment with music. So the summer school was totally different. And that's why you had over 300 students on campus. So yes, I do believe Title IV, as an educator, I know the impact of it. I know that it helps engage students. We fully support the proposal to increase Title IV-A. Again, as an educator, I've seen the impacts of those programs like wraparound services for students that keep students engaged and keep them reaching at high levels.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. And thank you for visiting Oregon. It was a great visit. And I just want to, again, emphasize as someone who worked a lot on the Every Student Succeeds Act, including on the conference committee, the importance of that well-rounded education piece and what a difference it makes for students. I hope that that we can meet in advance of the fiscal year 24 budget to discuss the importance of this funding. Secretary Cardona, I applaud the fact that payments, interest accrual, and collections on federally held student loans have been paused since March 2020 to support borrowers as they navigate the pandemic. And I've heard from many borrowers who are, let's say, very concerned about what happens at the end of the pause, which is why I introduced the Student Loan Borrower Safety Net Act. So when payments resume, my bill will help by providing earlier and more frequent outreach to borrowers, making it easier for borrowers to get into income-driven repayment plans and access economic hardship support, also provide back-end protections for those who end up missing payments after the pause ends. So the goal is to provide services and a support system to help especially the most vulnerable borrowers. We should not end the pause until we put these safeguards in place, along with a comprehensive plan to help new and future borrowers. So what steps is the department taking to help borrowers when payments restart? And how will you determine whether the servicers have the information they need to best support student loan borrowers?
Again, thank you for that. This is an example of something that we realize we have to do better. The Department of Education has to do better. So we're really proud of the work that's happening under FSA, the Federal Student Aid, to make sure that there are better on-ramps for borrowers to get back to repayment in a way that is manageable for them, where they can be successful and get back to repaying loans in a way that they're not being asked to pay more than they can afford. We're working on income-driven repayment changes to make sure that it's reasonable and it's manageable for our borrowers. We're also communicating early and often with our borrowers. We're proactively engaging with them, especially those that are at risk of delinquency, to give them options. It's very intimidating for our borrowers to have to think about going back into the system, but I can assure you the system that they're going to be going back to is not the same system that left, or the system where they didn't have answers or it was unclear. So we take this very seriously, and we too agree that when we do start the end the pause and start the repayment process, we have to have a more user-friendly process that's more clear to the borrowers, and working with our servicers to make sure that they have the information that they need and that they're taking care of our borrowers so that they can be successful repaying.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. And as I yield back, I just want to note the importance of, yes, this is a short-term solution, but in the long term, we need to make higher education affordable and accessible for all. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.